Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Rite, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. I'm Christi Van Rite, your host, and today we're continuing our series on auction houses, specifically how families can choose the one that really best fits their needs and sort of demystify how this whole process works. So today I'm joined by Miss Caroline Baker-Smith from Freeman's Auction House. Caroline, before we dive into this conversation, could you give us a little bit of background on yourself and Freeman's?
Hi, yes, of course. I'm delighted to be here on your podcast. A bit of background about me. I currently serve as Vice President and Senior Director of Trusts, Estates, and Private Clients for Freeman's Auction House. Before joining our firm, I worked for about 10 years at Christie's Auction House in New York City, where I served on the Trust and Estates business development team. So I've been in the auction world for quite some time. I was an art history major at Cornell University and had my first introduction to the auction house and the art market through an internship at Christie's when I was a student. I've spent a lot of time in this world and had the opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business. And now I'm with Freeman's, which is an upper middle market auction house, as we will discuss and dive into. Freeman's is an interesting and historic company and brand. When I first joined the firm, we were Hindman, a company called Hindman, which was headquartered in Chicago, founded in the 1980s by a Chicagoan, Leslie Hindman. And then about 2 years ago, after being with the firm for a little while, we merged with Freeman's Auction House, which is a very historic Philadelphian company. It's actually America's oldest auction house. So now we are moving forward as a merged and unified team under one name, which is Freeman's. So that is a very exciting development for our firm. And we're excited to help celebrate America's 250th anniversary as America's oldest auction house with roots in Philadelphia. So that's a little bit about me and our firm.
Love it. So let's talk a little bit about when people hear auction house, you do tend to think, whether you come up with the names or not, Christie's or Sotheby's, mostly because those are the names you hear with these big, these big auctions, these big pieces of, artwork, the Monets, the ones that go for high dollars. It feels like those are the things that you hear about. And so those are kind of sometimes the names that people associate with auction houses. But help us understand, what exactly is a boutique or a regional, kind of that upper middle market, and how does Freeman sort of in general fit into this auction house landscape?
Yes, great question. In the news and the art world media, you often hear about the big global auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's, and they are doing multi-million, even multi-billion annual sales and handling masterpieces of great value. Where we as a firm sit in the ecosystem of the auction house world and the art market, we sit somewhere below those global auction houses and above maybe a local sort of hyper-regional estate sale company. So we are in that middle tier of the auction world. And to be more specific, that means that we handle items, works of art, objects that are at a lower price point than the big houses. We handle a very wide range of categories and price points. And I can say on the low end, we handle objects that are a few $1,000s all the way up to $1 million. And I would say our real sweet spot as a company is maybe say $5,000 or $10,000 to $250,000. So it's a wide range, but we are operating at a different price point than the bigger houses. And we are also operating at a different price point than the very local estate sale company who might be selling things for a couple $100s or even less.
Got it. So boutique doesn't necessarily mean small. It means more specialized in particular collections
That's a
overall.
great point. Boutique doesn't mean small. In fact, our auction house is a U.S. firm. We operate domestically. However, we have the largest footprint of any auction house in the U.S. in terms of our locations and where we do sales. So we have a total of 6 sale rooms, 6 auction rooms around the country. And as I mentioned, we have roots in Chicago, we have roots in Philadelphia. Those are 2 of our very large auction rooms. We also have auctions that take place in New York City, as well as Cincinnati, Denver, and Palm Beach. So regional or boutique certainly doesn't mean small. We operate very widely in terms of our sales. And we also have a very large network of colleagues around the country. So for me, as a professional who focuses on business development with estates, families, private collections, or private collectors, there's basically one of me in every other state, I like to say. I have colleagues who are based around the country. We have someone in California, Southern California. We have a colleague in Milwaukee, Palm Beach, Virginia, St. Louis. So we're not only operating with strong teams in the New York and Los Angeles art scenes. We pride ourselves on connecting cities around the country to the global art market. Again, we are a U.S. company. However, we do have international buyers who transact in our sales. So that's what I mean when I say connecting U.S. cities to the global auction world.
Got it. Okay. So talk to us a little bit about what I've learned is many of the auction houses have some specialties. So when a family is, or a collector has items that they are ready to either purchase or sell, sometimes the getting to the house that has a specialization in the collection that they have can be beneficial. So what are some of the collections that Freeman's specializes in?
Yes, we handle a very wide range of property, as we say. We can handle, I think our number is 52 collecting categories. That's anything from fine art, many different genres of fine art, jewelry, furniture and decorative arts, Asian works of arts. So we can handle a lot of things. And I would say, as a reminder to our listeners, the art market, the antique market is vast. It's huge. And there's sort of these micro markets within the larger art world. And our firm, Freeman's, is very active in a number of those sort of micro markets. For instance, we, as some of our listeners may also have heard this, the buzzword of brown furniture, antique wooden furniture of English or American nature. A lot of the larger auction houses are winding down their furniture and decorative arts departments simply because tastes have changed, especially at a very high level. And however, our firm is still handling the more traditional categories like brown furniture. The market has changed, as I mentioned, and the prices paid back in the 80s and 90s for beautiful antique American furniture, we're never going to get back to those levels. However, our firm still offers those types of pieces and sells them quite well at a certain price point. I would say, because we are a regional firm and we have roots and a strong brand recognition in the Chicago area and the Midwest, we also focus on certain artists and genres that are popular in those parts of the country. So for instance, our team has a very strong track record in selling works by an artist whose name is Gertrude Abercrombie. And she was an artist active in the 1950s in the post-war US, a woman artist, and she was a surrealist painter. And some of her works are very enigmatic and dark and kind of even spooky. But it's an artist that we've handled over the last many years and have helped create a very strong market for that artist. In addition to the sort of more traditional categories that I mentioned, like furniture and decorative arts, fine art, jewelry, we also handle some categories that other houses don't. And that makes us unique and helps our clients and families if they have that type of material. So, for instance, we handle Native American art and Western art. Those two categories are often sold in our Denver location. We also have a thriving sports memorabilia department, which is newer to our firm, but quite popular. We also can handle arms and armor, so vintage firearms. And that's a category that is very unique in the market. We are one of the few sort of traditional auction houses that can help in that way. And I think that's important for families and individuals to hear, because you're often faced with a collection of sort of antique, vintage, important American firearms when a family member passes away or something is inherited. And we are a firm that can help find a solution for those pieces.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So I think that one is interesting because I've not talked to a lot of houses that will handle that. And clearly there is a line, modern firearms. This is not what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
So is there like a definition of vintage in this instance?
Vintage firearms? Well, I would say that we're talking guns and weaponry that was used in historic conflicts. A piece that maybe was from World War II, World War I, a colonial war, a ceremonial sword or something like that is tied to a certain historic military person or a conflict. So I would say it's all tied to history.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to maybe help people think about what that means in real life. Okay, so super helpful context. What would you say to a family who says, well, we don't really collect art, so you've clearly mentioned brown furniture, which I had not heard yet, but makes sense. You know, the antique furniture, some of the, obviously the historic firearms or the vintage firearms. How does a family look around their home differently to say, oh, maybe I do have a collection, or, you know, the kids are coming in because it is an estate situation.
Yes.
How should a family look around their home in from a different lens if they are looking to?
A very great question, because I often, in talking with trust and estate attorneys or wealth manager, different types of advisors to families, they say, well, I don't really work with a family or an individual who is a collector. So I don't know that we really have anything that we need your help on. And a different way of looking at it is, especially for us in the upper middle market, handling a different value of an object. Families have attractive and beautiful furnishings that are in their homes that maybe an important interior designer was involved in making or placing in that residence. That can often be more valuable than you think. Also, antiques and other older tangibles that may have been passed down through generations that you might not associate with a high value. Those are certainly items that might be considered as a part of your estate in terms of a higher value. Also, families, individuals who live with just in general beautiful things. So porcelain, silver, jewelry, handbags, watches. So we're not necessarily just talking about the Picassos and the Monets and the sort of typical art collector, the stereotypical art collector you might think. We're talking about multi-generational families who have beautiful furnishings, interesting family heirlooms, and other higher value tangible personal property that may be a part of an eventual estate. And another buzzword I'll mention or phrase is the great wealth transfer, where we're seeing the baby boom generation transferring wealth and things to their children. And I mentioned earlier in the conversation that tastes change. That's just part of progression and development. And more often than not, we hear from families, my kids don't want my things. my brown furniture, my historic, collectibles don't fit in the context of my child's home.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of important personal property that is being passed down, and more heirs are not interested in keeping it. So that's an opportunity for a family to consider what they have, to do some planning, understand the value of those tangible items, and perhaps work it into an estate plan, or at least have a conversation with their children and grandchildren early on about what things might be kept and what things might be sold at auction.
Got it. So whenever we were chatting about putting the podcast together, you had mentioned that auction houses also collaborate. Can you explain a little bit about how that works and when it would make sense to maybe collaborate between one or two houses?
Yes, the auction world and the art market is a global thing, but it is actually quite small. So many of us at the different auction houses, whether it be a large global house or a more regional boutique firm like Freeman's, many of us have worked together. So we're all friends here, and sometimes it's best for a client, for a family, to have a solution that involves a number of different players, a number of different auction houses, so that a large firm like Christie's or Sotheby's might help handle the masterpieces of, millions of dollars and up. And then they might call on a firm like Freeman's to collaborate and help sell the items that are lower value. And offering that two-pronged approach, sometimes even three-pronged approach, if we include an even lower value or an even smaller firm, sometimes that two-pronged approach is really the best for the client and provides a more holistic, comprehensive service.
Got it. So I think the string that I'm going to pull on there for everyone who's listening is it's not necessarily about the name of the house in so much is it's more about what houses focus on what types of collections and where those collections can be published and sold to do the best for the family. And I love that you mentioned, Caroline, that the auction house is such a small industry that you all know each other. And like you said, you came from Christie's. And so I love that while any industry, there is certainly competition, there really is a collaborative nature between the houses. And when it comes right down to it, if a family needs a 2 or 3-pronged approach, then generally speaking, that is what's going to be discussed because it's what's best for the family.
Truly.
Is that
we're,
fair?
We're all in a very client service focused industry. It's all about the collector, the client, the family, and their things. And making sure that we are finding as I said, a comprehensive solution that meets their needs is paramount. There are occasions when our firm, Freeman's, is able to be that comprehensive, holistic auction partner because we can sell such a wide range of things, perhaps a couple of paintings that are in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. But then there's also a group of furniture or lower value Asian works of art, perhaps, that are closer to the $10,000 range or lower, and we can handle that as well. And additionally, given going back to our geographical locations and our presence around the country, we can be that full service house because we have colleagues and a team in so many different locations. So where I sit in Boston, Massachusetts as the New England representative, working closely with New York, if we're having conversations with a family who have a residence in the Boston area, perhaps a pianotier in New York, and a ski house out in Aspen, we have teams and colleagues in those regions where we can be present and offer end-to-end high-touch service.
Yeah, I think many of the auction houses have local, at some point, local representation, which I think is important. So if a family is in this situation, whether it's because they want to be or maybe they don't want to be, but here they are anyway, what are some of the first things that when they find themselves in that position, that they should think about or should start Googling, or what's the phone call or what's the query to make to find a starting place in this world?
Well, oftentimes the question is, what is it worth? So whether a family is in a downsizing scenario or an estate scenario, having a valuation, having an appraisal is very important. So making contact with a local representative at an auction house and asking about their appraisal services would be a good place to start. And in so many of the estate scenarios, an estate tax appraisal is required depending on the size of the estate and the location. So working with a family on the appraisal process is often a starting point for us at Freeman's. We offer a very wide range of appraisal services. Some of the other auction houses are moving away from sort of the full menu of valuations, and that's because they're time consuming and they require a lot of work and staffing. Our firm can still assist with basically any type of appraisal because we have a dedicated team that works on those appraisals. So having the conversation about appraisals, what type of appraisal is needed, is often where we start with a family. And then usually it's an organic progression to talking about sales, talking about a consignment. So that is, again, sometimes the first question, the first call is about an appraisal.
Got it. Okay. Any just kind of overall general last thoughts, anything that we didn't go over or chat about that you want to kind of auction in general, what someone ought to know?
Yes, I think as a follow-up to your last question about, how do things start? Another important reminder I would say to your listeners is that keeping records and receipts, documents, paperwork is really helpful for yourself, but also for your family. Even if it is a very basic inventory list that's written out by hand, or if it's something that's slightly more official, an Excel document, or even perhaps an inventory or an appraisal through an auction house or an appraisal firm, having documentation and some records of what you own, where you purchased it, or how you came to own it, maybe if it was a gift or a bequeath, having those documents will be very helpful for that next stage, whether it's the appraisal process or a consignment. So keep your receipts and have the conversations early with your family about what you have and perhaps what your children like and don't like, so that it's not a surprise at a certain point and you have understanding of what might be kept within the family and what might be sold.
Got it. I love that. We actually, and by we, I mean our aunts, have spent a lot of time with our grandmother going through the house and cataloging, because she does have a lot of antiques and things that they had collected over the years, and some of them were like from the original homestead four generations ago, and so some of it's I know it's really incredible. Yeah. But
that's a great process to go through and to do it well as a family, multiple generations.
Right. It's been so fun listening to Mima tell the stories of these various things, and that the box was found under the original home that was built in the the mid 1800s on the property. It's incredible, and those were things that we never there's no way we would have ever have known those had we not sat down. And quite frankly, I mean, even though those stories are so cool and interesting in that moment, I will tell you that she's been telling us stories for years. And yet every time I'm like, oh my goodness. She's like, yeah, remember we talked about this. And I'm like, yeah. I really have to write these things down because
get it down on paper somewhere. We often hear the story, well, my grandmother or my mother told me that this was incredibly rare and valuable. And sometimes that's true.
Right. And sometimes it was to her.
Truly. And sometimes the modest items, things that are of least value, monetarily speaking, are the ones that are the most important and the ones that can be the most contentious in terms of family decision making.
I have seen it.
So
I've definitely seen that with some of our families. Very good. Caroline, thank you so much for spending some time and chatting with me today. If someone would like to connect with you, what are some of the places that they can find you?
Sure. You can find us, our firm, Freeman's, at our website, freemansauction.com.
Okay.
And you can find me on the website. As I mentioned, I sit here in New England as the representative for our firm, but I spend a lot of time with our New York team and our colleagues at different headquarters between Chicago and Philly. But all of our contact information for people like me on the business development side, as well as our specialists, is all available on our website. So that is the best place to reach us. And I'm sure you'll be able to share my email address and details with anyone who's interested in connecting.
I sure will, and I'll link to the website in the show
great.
notes. So, Caroline, thank you. Really appreciate your time. To all of our listeners, I hope this was helpful and informative, and I hope you have enjoyed auction week. So, until next time.
Great. Yes.
Thank you.
It was lovely to talk to you. Thanks for having me, Christi.
Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind, where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Rite, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.